Hello and welcome to another Talking Geeky Stuff with me, Tennessee. Hope everyone enjoyed that nice little intro scene. And today's topic is, well, we kind of gave it away with the intro, right? It's about Neo Geo, SNK Neo Geo. But more precise, it's going to be more about the console. The console that is an arcade, technically speaking. So you're kind of like a console at home with an arcade. So Neo Geo is one of those consoles that was, in gaming terms, it's back then anyway, it was, I knew a friend who had one. He had two, to be exact, a Japanese version and an American version. I used to go around his house a lot and play, those great games as well. That's why I kind of first got introduced with Metal Slug, King of Fighters, Face of Fury, Art of Fighting, and World Heroes, and so on. So even though back then, yeah, my friend he was one of the first persons I knew that had all these consoles that was not official. For example, Neo Geo, PC Engine, he had those kind of games, consoles, I mean. So I used to go in his house and play that all the time. Of course, until later on, until about mid-90s, 95, 96 or something, when Neo Geo slowly started to fade out because all the new consoles started coming out, right? I started picking one up. And I got, being a gamer and so on, so I picked one up, started playing it. Yeah, so looking back at it, it was a good console. I think really definitely it's not your, how do you say it, not mainstream console, because at that time you had a Sony PlayStation, or Neo Geo kind of had, it survived like two generations. It came, the height of that Mega Drive, Super Nintendo. It kind of also survived all the way to the N64 coming out, PlayStation, the Sega Saturn came out, and it did pretty well for the the hardcore gamers. It was like a luxury product because games cost a lot of money. I mean, anybody who has been gaming for some time, like the Super Nintendo days, even to the Nintendo 64 days, will know that cartridges cost more money than they are now. And considering back then as well, because I'm from UK, right? If you buy a lot of the official consoles back then, the UK signal was PAL, PAL, where the Americans and Japanese would have SCART. So with SCART, you had a kind of faster input, sharper graphics, and so on. So a lot of our consoles back then, me and my friends always end up, importing them, the Japanese versions or American versions of the console. So therefore, we end up importing games. Like I remember Street Fighter 2 when it first came out. I got the American version. Not like it was a Japanese version, and that cost me about 80, 90 pounds, and so on. So paying 70 to 80 pounds is pretty standard back then, But of course, with the Neo Geo, it was a totally different story. It was £150 minimum to 200, £250, right? But it was a luxury thing. It was like you can boast about. I got a Neo Geo. It's an arcade at home, because arcade was still a big thing back in the 90s, right? And then let's not talk about the size of the cartridge. It was big. It was massive. I mean, bigger than some consoles are today, And they're always kind of on the. You can look at some of the images here on the box itself. It tell you how big is 106 megs, 394 megs. It will boast about how much megabytes or megabits these games are running. Back in the Super Nintendo days, 16-bit. You might get extra ones that was 24-bit. I think some cartridges were up to 32-bit. Even when the N64 come out, it's 128-bit sort of thing, right? But before that, you can see Neo Geo had 100 and whatever, 300 megs in their cartridge, So let's kind of see why it was so expensive. But of course, so yeah, I used to go around my friend's house and play. The games introduced me to Metal Slug, a fantastic cyber scroller, to like beat 'em ups. Even before that, I always thought that Neo Geo games, especially in the arcade, was kind of like the poor man's version of Capcom's Street Fighter or Street Fighter 2. But of course, as I started to play more and more Neo Geo, then of course eventually owning one, I realized they're not the poor man's version. They had their own charm to it. I ended up liking King of Fighters the most out of all the SNK beat 'em ups. I like Samurai Showdown, World Heroes was fantastic. The only one that didn't go down too well was Art of Fighting. Yeah, so Art of Fighting I felt it was too sluggish, and the main character is just a blatant rip-off of Ken from Street Fighter 2, of course, and so on, yeah. So, of course, around 95, I think I got one myself. Because, at that time I had a part-time job and I was still into gaming and purchased one. And a few years later, when I started going to university, I realized university need money, so I ended up selling it. I can't remember how much I got it for, but I remember what I got was a console, 2 controllers or 2 joysticks, and about 5 or 6 games. Majority were beat 'em ups, and I sold it for a pretty decent price. So I can't remember how much it was, but it was a pretty decent price. It kept me going for a few months in university. Speaking about the cartridge size, here's a little comparison that I did a little drawing of. So the Super Nintendo cartridge I drew was modeled after the Japanese cartridge. So you can see the comparisons between them. The Super Nintendo cartridge was pretty big on its own, right, if you compare it to nowadays. So you can imagine how big the Neo Geo cartridge was. It was big. But anyway, for those who are hardcore gamers and looking into maybe collection, they've probably done the Super Nintendo collection, they've done the Nintendo 64 collection. They're more maybe into cartridge games. Definitely, if you get a chance to look into Neo Geo, it's going to be quite expensive. Some of the games. The console will probably be less than the games if you go on eBay now. So I might look into it, but then again, it's not that I don't want to buy it. I just have no space to put any more games or anything like that. And besides, I got these games, multiple versions of them. It was the King of Fighters series that kind of got me into buying the Sega Saturn first before the PlayStation, because I still think the Sega Saturn was the best console for 2D beat 'em up games. And then, of course, it carried on that tradition in Dreamcast, where the Dreamcast had a lot of SNK beat 'em ups. So I got multiple, and then of course I ended up buying loads of King of Fighter games and SNK beat 'em up games and SNK games alone on the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3. Of course, I got some of these games on the Nintendo eShop now, so I'm not in no rush in buying them. The main thing, I just don't have no space. If I had more space, I'll probably definitely consider collecting some Neo Geo stuff again. Anyway, thank you for listening to me going down some memory lane about Neo Geo. Yeah, please let me know, did you have a Neo Geo? If you did, which is your favourite game? And do you still have it? Or are you thinking of buying one and start a collection? Definitely let me know. If you like these kind of videos, please give us a like. And please maybe consider subscribing to the channel for more of me talking about geeky stuff. I'd like to say thank you, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. And please stay safe. Goodbye.